If you're an audiophile or somebody who is so into audio to the point where you want samples and you want latency spec, DAAD specs, you might as well just skip off the video now because I'm not going to get that deep into it. What I can give you is just a normal person perspective.
Yeah. Jsean.
Hey, what's going on? This is Jsean. If you're an audiophile or somebody who is so into audio to the point where you want samples and you want all these different latency specs and all this other DAAD specs, you might as well just skip off the video now because I'm not going to get that deep into it. What I can give you is just a normal person perspective. Anybody who is that knowledgeable about most of those specs, who have had higher end gear, understand a lot of these things and don't really need to explain. There's things that you can just read right off the pamphlet or the back of the box. I'll explain most of those specs that you just have questions about. You don't need me to tell you about it. I'm just going to give you my opinion. Now, what my opinion means is just that I'm a person who mainly had dealt with like hip hop, R&B style of music. I've been doing it for quite a while, but I've pretty much stepped off of it to the point where it's more of just something on the side. And when I say on the side, I really say that loosely because it's something I barely even have time for at this point. So I've had inboxes to the Digi 02 or is it 03? I can't remember, the gray board. I've had different Apogee converters. I've had everything but universal audio. I had Avalon 737s. I had the Symphony, Ventec, a mic pre. I had the Gracie compressor and the mic pre. What else was it? The Symphony Mark II, which is really nice converter. I have the Slate VMS system. I think it's the VMS 1. So long story short is I've had experience and have experience with a lot of good gear. Everybody starts off a little low and works their way up for the most part. I will say this about audio gear, at least in my opinion, and what I can tell as being somebody who's always spent it. I didn't go to studios who had it already provided. These are things that I had to kind of work from the way up and spend my own money on. What I noticed is that there's a different level of quality from the headphone pre's to how you monitor yourself, to how you analog to digital, basically the mic preamps as far as how noisy they are, the width of how they project when you record, meaning is it a narrow sound, is it a wider sound? So a lot of Neve stuff has more of a wider sound. So if you're recording vocals, and I'm not talking about warm and saturation, I'm just talking about the way it projects, or I don't know if I'm using the right terminology, but the way you're recording it, basically, okay? The way you're printing it to a track or whatever. It naturally has a little bit of a wider sound, a wider and flat, okay? If that makes any sense. So if you're looking for a big sound, maybe some of the Neve stuff is what you wanna look for. A lot of, what is it? My Avalon 737, which is really popular with like hip hop, has more of a narrow sound. So it's punchy, but narrow, but it sticks out in the mix because it lets other things breathe. While the other preamp is a bigger sound where you might have to mixture, it may be a little harder to mix for some people just because your vocals are so front and wide, if that makes sense. Now, some people can take like Avalon or something cheaper and they'll pan it and do all this. I don't have time for that. I don't know if that's what they do in big major studios, but I never got that deep into it to the point where I pan stuff here, pan stuff there, double this. That's too much. I just feel like that's not a normal approach, even though it might be. Like I said, I never actually got recorded into a major studio or anything like that. I did a couple studios, but I ended up doing it myself and purchasing a lot of things to trial and error. Now, to get to my point is, I noticed from very cheap stuff to mid-grade stuff, maybe 1,000 and under, 600 under, you'll notice maybe a significant difference, especially with mic pre's. Back in the day, I never even used the internal mic pre. They were always kind of like very stale, kind of like a demo sounding sound, very raw, without the smoothness. You know, I know you can compress it and do all these different things, but it just had a demo sound to it to me. I'm not saying you can't make something with it. I'm just saying for somebody like myself, right out the box, it just sounded a little demo-ish. Not homemade, but local sounding, if that makes any sense. Then when you get to like, just say the $1,000 type dollar stuff, units, mic pre's and stuff, for me, remember, times has changed. So I've been doing this for a long time. So now times has changed to the point, like when I bought an Apogee Duet, I was super surprised with internal mic pre's. I was super surprised with the conversion for the price point. I was like, wow, technology, there's no reason why Avalon should cost couple grand nowadays when technology itself should surpass whatever quality that was pushing out. It's older gear, it's older technology where they should have stuff better than that, in my opinion. I tried another Avalon. It's not the tube pre, but it's a small version. They make a double rack also, and I didn't really like it. I felt like it sounded just like the internal mic pre's. It wasn't any different. I felt like I was wasting $1,200 or whatever it was at the time. And just after I got rid of my oh man, I'm talking. I took the mic off. Hold on. Sorry, the mic's all the way over here. That was whack. So excuse that noise. I noticed when you get to a certain point, when you're spending thousands and thousands, and mind you, in big studios, they have $100,000 boards and, you know, and up. It's really expensive. Microphones, 10,000 plus and whatever else. So I'm just talking about on the level that I have and had, right? That I personally own, not that I read somewhere or anything like that. I didn't go to, no offense to Guitar Center, but Guitar Center where half the people in there don't even own the stuff that you're speaking about or want to inquire about. It's kind of weird. That's the only store that I've actually talked to people who didn't really have knowledge of things that I wanted to purchase because they weren't the entry level things. They were a little bit higher than that. So I'm fully aware that it wasn't the stuff that I had or was interested, wasn't the highest level possible, but it was definitely higher than a typical person getting into music. So with that being said, when you get to certain levels of spending money with audio quality, you're spending a lot of money for very subtle differences. The differences are so subtle, honestly, nobody will probably notice it except the engineer or yourself because you heard yourself so much, you know what you're looking for, you know what you're listening for, right? The average person probably won't even know the difference. You could get a brand new piece of gear and be like, oh, I'm so pumped, this sounds good, doesn't it, blah, 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 blah. And then you like, everybody listen, and they're probably just like, it sounds the same to me, and not knowing that you spent thousands of dollars for that subtle change. That's my opinion. So I'm giving you all this backstory because on the internet, there's a lot of videos that's already showing the unit, putting specs up, putting sound samples and all this other stuff. I'm just giving you, just like if we met at a Guitar Center or a Sweetwater or something like that, and the places that I personally recommend that I've had great experiences with, not saying nothing's wrong with Guitar Center, because if that's your local spot, you just do what you do. It's just that I've noticed that when you get into some of the higher end entry-level type of stuff, I noticed that a lot of people at Guitar Center really have no hands-on experience with those things, and that's kind of bothersome because you're trying to buy something that you may not be able to even return. You can't hear what it sounds like in the store necessarily in your environment, and you might be stuck with it, and then you're asking somebody's opinion and they have no hands-on real-life experience with it. That makes no sense. It's like being in a car dealership, you selling cars that you never even driven before. It makes no sense. Places like Sweetwater actually have people who have like track records of engineering and been in major studios and involved in even certain type of hit records back in the day or whatever the case is. Vintage King is pretty good. What's the other one that I get? The one that I got this from is Alto Music. They have really good deals, even on, and I'm not really big on refurbished or buying secondhand or used items, but I've actually bought one thing from them before. Can't remember what it was. It was, I think it was a factory refurbished item or something like that, but they're really good. They're based in New York. I think it's like upstate New York or something like that. That's where I got this from. They only had a few of these in stock, and as soon as I saw they had like 2 or whatever left, I hurried up and ordered it, and then I got it like a couple days later. So I'm giving you the perspective of just, you know, a normal person, which I am, you know what I mean? So I know I'm kind of rambling and going around the bush because I don't really plan these videos. I just, as you can tell, I'm just going on and speaking and speaking. Once I use this, I'm just gonna go back and punch into the video and give you my honest opinion of, well, obviously I think it's gonna be worth it just for the simple price point of being a few $100s. Then they got the Motu, which I personally never heard of. I don't have any experience with Motu. I love Apogee stuff. I think Apogee, some people think it's a clearer sound. I never had universal audio, which I was thinking about getting after this, but what I wanted is a bus powered unit. Everything's portable now. It's not about having the big units anymore and stuff like that. I'm always on a laptop more than my desktop. I'm always on the go. I want to use it more for more reasons than just studio type music recording. There's other things that I want to utilize this for. So I feel like a bus powered unit is good. SSL is a great name. It's a known name for a lot of their boards and stuff like that. I have no personal experience with them. So I'm just wondering, is this hype off of the name itself, or is it actually a good unit? Because I'm trying to figure out, for the price point, you have to cut corners, right? You have to cut corners somewhere. Either they're cutting corners, or the units that you're buying right now, you're getting screwed. You're getting ripped off like crazy. So there's only two options. You're either cutting corners in build quality, manufacturing plants, or wherever you're getting it manufactured from overseas, or you're getting ripped off like crazy from a different company who's selling things, right? So Apogee is pretty expensive. They just got a new desktop version that I'm super interested in, the Symphony. I just feel like the Symphony has a nice round, smoother sound, if that makes any sense, their conversion quality. I think with hip hop, it all depends. If you're doing R&B, I think that sounds good, but I feel like if you're going for that, I feel like rap should be punchy and kind of like just a punchy, clear sound, in my opinion. That's just kind of like what I kind of lean towards. When I used to think I wanted a big, round, smooth sound, I kind of like the punchy sound. So I'm hoping that the clarity with this is fine. I have the VMS1 now. I've had U87s, the TLM, I think it's the 102. I had multiple U87s actually, the new style. I had the Manly reference mic. I've always wanted the C800. I bought the, what is it called? The VMS1 because you're supposed to emulate and it's pretty cheap. I've had two of them. I have the little pencil mic from them that I don't even use. But the VMS1, I got it and I ended up getting rid of it and bought it right back. For the price, I think you can't beat it. What I'm kind of trying to get away from is not necessarily analog gear, but I'm getting tired of all this software related stuff. So you have you're using Pro Tools or Studio One or whatever you're using, and then you get like a UA system or an Apogee system, and then within Apogee, to use it, they have their own kind of software that you have to use on top of everything, and then you got the Slate stuff that you got to use on top of it, and now everybody's trying to come out with their own DAW, and it's just like too many software and programs on programs. Sometimes just hands-on analog gear is great, and or this is the preamp, this is the interface, this is whatever, this is the mic. Sometimes I just rather have it like that. So I've had a little bit of both. Even though quality and technology has gone up, it's still to a point where I'm still not crazy about everything being software based. Even if it's very close and similar, things about it, it's just not exactly the same for me personally. Now, if you're okay with it, by all means, do what you gotta do. So this is readily available in the 2, right? I ended up picking up the 2 Plus because I feel like for the price, the little bit of price difference, why not? My box is smashed, it's all right. Hopefully it's not a demo. All right, I'm not gonna lie, I don't know if it's the shipping that dented this up, but it feels like this was a demo. Well, it still has a factory tape on it, but it's like beat up, man. I've usually get stuff in boxes, the box shipped in a box. This came in an envelope, so I guess that's why it might have got beat around a little bit. Again, you can stop here if you want. Some of you guys even get mad over me making videos like this, but this is why I don't want to be so technical anymore. This is just something I picked up. I just want to feel the build quality. There's different, oh, and this is another thing. I don't, in my opinion, when people have like different AD and DA converters and the specs are laid out as one thing, I never believe that those specs are always exact, meaning if you take a V8, right, from I don't even think Mazda makes a V8, but just say you took a V8 from a Mazda, a Honda, no, I don't think they make V8s either, an Acura, I don't know, Chevy, whatever, and then you took a V8 from, I don't know if they're V8s or V12s, but like say a Ferrari or something, right? Is it the same? It's definitely not the same. Just because the spec says it's the same V8, it doesn't mean it's the same performance, because there's a lot more that goes into it also than just the engine. There's the transmission, there's the wheels, the axle, whatever. There's so many other aspects that make the ride what it is, right? The performance factor, the programming, whatever. With music gear, I feel like it's the same. You can't just have the best converters on earth and have trash everything else and expect it to perform. I think it has to be a balance. Now, I hope that because of the name that is behind SSL, that they wouldn't go ahead and skimp on certain things. Now, I don't expect this to blow certain things out of the water, but I expect it to be pretty decent. I'm not gonna fool myself and be like, oh, this sounds better than my Symphony or whatever. I don't really think that. You can definitely hear the difference with cheaper digital and analog for sure. It's not just about dynamic range, it's just everybody has their own character. So I have a Personas headphone pre, right? That I use, it's like for 4 or 8 headphones or whatever, outs. My Apogee stuff has more of a 3D smooth kind of warmness, clear sound, if that makes any sense, just playing music. When I listen to, like I have a Rode Procaster, I think that's what it's called, it's for podcasting. When I hear myself monitoring, I feel like I sound cheap. It sounds like very demo, local, homemade, kind of frail, brittle, no life, no thickness to the bottom end of the vocal when you talk. But when you play it back, it doesn't sound as bad actually. It sounds better than what I heard myself. So it just doesn't have as good power or whatever. I don't know what the correct term is, but pushing, whatever it is that pushes the power, right? Say what you want to say, whatever. I'm not a technical audio, whatever, certified person to talk about whatever. I'm just a normal person. Remember, give me a break. So with this, I want to see how it is. Is it going to sound a little cheap, stale, frail, whatever? I don't know. What I do know is that I want it to sound clean. That is kind of a goal of mine. I want it to sound clear and clean. Now, what is kind of weird with this is that this has no pamphlet. Oh, yes, it does. I'm sorry. I'm about to say. This does have a pamphlet, and from what I know is you go ahead and register online and you can get a couple plugins and 6 months for a few other things. I'm not worried about Pro Tools. The one that comes with it is already free anyway, so that doesn't even mean anything. When I bought my Slate stuff, people said the VMS1, the preamp felt so cheap. It doesn't. It's like everybody has their own opinion. Does it feel like the heaviest brick? No, it does not. Is it the hugest, or the biggest or smallest? No, it's like somewhere in the middle. It has a decent amount of weight to it actually. It doesn't feel like cheap plastic or anything like that. Even though I'm sure it has plastic components in it. Let me see. One thing I did hear is that these mic inputs are wobbly. The crazy thing is my VMS1 is like that. I wish it could be a little bit better or made the inputs deeper, recessed in a little bit, but they didn't. It doesn't actually affect the sound quality. It is wiggly though. I don't know if this is like that. I heard these buttons don't feel the best, but as long as they work, I really don't care. I'm pushing all the buttons because I did read where somebody said the button didn't work on one of theirs. And there's always going to be quality control issue or potential issue for any unit you buy. I don't care what brand it is, how expensive it is. For me, sometimes I just happen to get bum units sometimes for whatever it is. It's not bad. This is metal on top. This is seems like to be a plastic outside frame, but everything else is metal construction. It feels nice. You don't want it too heavy anyway, but it doesn't feel cheap as far as the heaviness of it. The only thing I would say is, I mean, compared to maybe a different unit, it might be lighter or whatever, but in general, it doesn't feel bad. The only thing I do notice is, and this isn't a big deal, just a little annoying. I don't know if you can hear this. It's wobbling. I have a flat new table here, so I know it's not the table. I don't know why it's not proportional. I don't know if it's the little feet on the bottom. Like maybe one's a little bit bigger than the other. I'm not really sure, but mine wobbles on the table. That's kind of annoying. So, I mean, this could be part of the reason why, and this is not something you should think as a, what is the word? This is not something you should think of as a great feature to have something that don't wobble, but maybe those are the corners that they cut, you know what I mean? Where the slight variations and stuff like that. When you mass produce things, that's what ends up happening. I don't care if you're talking about shoes, if you're talking about hats or whatever it is. Now, these knobs, they say that they're good. They probably are. But the knobs itself, they're plastic. If I could change anything just on the aesthetic of it, and even if it costs $50 or even 100 more, I would wish that these buttons here that you hit, the 48 volt phantom power, let me try to zoom this in. The phantom power, any of these buttons, they do press in and stay in, so you can kind of tell that they are engaged, but it would be nice if they illuminated behind it maybe. Because there's illumination right here that lets you know that you're plugged in. I know the Motu has an on and off button, and I know a lot of people probably don't care about that, but I've always wondered why they make items like my Apple TV doesn't have an on and off switch. I just wish it had a physical hard button. I hate that it will click on automatically all the time without giving you the option. I don't know why they don't add that, but that's something I would pay for, the difference. These buttons being illuminated so I can just know for sure that it's engaged or not. I think that's pretty cool. And the other thing I would pay for is maybe, and these aren't things that I think are hard to do. I mean, this might be metal, but I think this is actually plastic. I would pay for metal knobs or aluminum or something, lightweight metal, something like that. And I think this will be pretty solid. And if these are wobbly, I guess for them to be deeper inside the unit. With that being said, I'm just gonna kind of listen to it, go through it a little bit. I'm probably going to use it on Studio One for right now. I used to use Pro Tools. Studio One looks better to me, but as an editor, I mean, for editing, I feel like Pro Tools is just basic, but it just gets the job done. It's like Apple is basic. People don't think it has a lot of the bells and whistles that maybe Android uses, or Apple in general. I feel like it just works. Does that make sense? I feel like Pro Tools is where I'm gonna go back to. The only thing that sucks about it is the last time I had it was Pro Tools 10. I paid for an upgrade. It was pretty expensive. Back from my Pro Tools 8 or 7 days or 6 days, whatever it was. And then now I gotta pay another 500 or 400, 300, I don't know, 600, I don't know what it is. I already paid a grip for Studio One and paid for the upgrade, but I just prefer the other one, Pro Tools. It looks better, and you can probably do better producing on there for people who make beats and stuff like that. But I prefer Pro Tools just for editing, in my opinion. I just like it better. Yeah, I just know where things are. There's certain little things that I want done that I just can't do on Studio One. It's very small. To some people, it will mean nothing. It's just for me, in my experience, I just wish it was there. It's so much that it bothers me still that it's not in Studio One. It's so much that I'm willing to spend some money to go back to Pro Tools, if that makes sense. So it means stuff to certain people. It means something to me. So with that being said, wait for me to cut back, and I'm just gonna do some talking. I know I've already talked way too much, but I'm gonna go ahead and tell you off the rip if it's just trash, in my opinion, based on what I used and what I told you. Is it trash compared to units that I have, and how does it compare to units that I've used personally or own personally or currently have? Right now, I'm using the Element 24. I like it. I have the controller for it that I used to use on my my Symphony, just to control. I mean, even that's $200 by itself, and the unit is like $5, I think, or something like that. So that's like $700 compared to this is under $300. I'm pretty sure some things about that will sound better, but the inconvenience of some of the things with using that unit with software-based nonsense and having to plug it into the wall, we'll see how it pans out. So I'll get right back to you. I know some people just don't need the 2+ part of it, the extra outs and the extra headphone, but I would suggest just spending a little bit more if you can. The size difference between the two units don't look that much different. So they're both portable, they're still both bus powered, and you're getting a little bit more it's a better bang for your buck, basically. Now, if you absolutely don't need it, then obviously do whatever you need to do, but I would just suggest spending a little bit more and getting the better bang for your buck. Now, with that being said, I kind of wanted to wrap up because this is a super non-technical video. Probably way too much talking for people who are into audio stuff because you want to hear samples and stuff like that. But I'll just say this. The unit is really nice. I think it's well worth the money. There are some things that I wish were maybe different in build quality. I stated earlier in the video, and now after using it all day, I would say, let's see. What was the other thing about it? The only thing about functionality wise, it would be the headphone output. I feel like the headphone output needs a little bit more power. So if you turned it from 0 to 12, from 0 to 10 or whatever you want to call it, I wish it could go to like 0 to maybe 15. I can literally turn it to max and it's still not that loud to me in my ears. And most systems I can't turn up all the way. Now, we'll say, I don't know if it's different or what is different, or maybe it's the way I have something else set up because I just transferred it right out of my existing system. The speaker out, the monitor, the big knob, basically, it's loud. I pretty much don't even turn it past, say, 9 or 10 o'clock, and it's like really hitting hard on my Yamahas. That I don't think there's HS5s or something like that. I don't even remember HS7s. I don't even remember, but you can see them in the background, the white ones. They're like the second to the largest Yamahas that's in that style, and they hit pretty hard. I will say that it's very clear, has a very open sound, if that makes any sense. Compared to my Element, I have an Apogee Element also. Even though I've always liked Apogee stuff, I think it sounds clear also. It has a nice little sheen to it, but it's more of a smoother sound, if that makes any sense. And I feel like this is very clear. Now, clear could also be very borderline and brittle sounding. And it does, I don't know what it was, but my ears are getting really fatigued listening to stuff on my headphones, and I didn't have overly bassy headphones, and I had them drive like at 100% because it wasn't that loud. I mean, it was loud, but it wasn't to the point where I couldn't take it. And then my ears got fatigued pretty quickly because I feel like it's very sharp. It's not like very sibilant or anything like that. It's just very clear. If that, I don't know how to explain it. It's just not a smooth sound. It's just a very clear, punchy sound. And in headphones, it kind of gave me a little fatigue compared to what I'm used to listening to. But it's not a big deal. It's just what I'm understanding about the system. I have a Personas. What is this? The HP4. That's a monitoring system to get more headphone outs. And even though that's not supposed to color your sound, I don't believe it's supposed to. You still actually can hear the difference in quality. It's not passing through 100%. You can tell it kind of like makes it sound a little less quality coming out of my Apogee stuff. And I guess if you wanted to drive more power, you could try to hook that up. I just don't have the right connections because a lot of people have, it's like an XLR or TRS cable, and a lot of systems are back and forth with what they want to use. So all my systems tend to be a little bit different in my connection. So I didn't have the cable to test that to see how it worked. Now, I would only want that for my headphones. I wouldn't want to use it for the monitor out because I don't want to color that sound at all. I like how it sounds very clear, very full, and pretty loud. It's just the headphones aren't, I would like them to be a bit more powerful, but it's not a big deal. It's not a deal breaker. The price, it comes with 2 plugins and the rest of the bundle. You get like a vocal strip and you get a drum strip and you get a whole bunch of other SSL plugins for a 6-month trial. I don't know what that means to other people. I tested out the vocal strip and the drum strip. They are pretty nice, but I don't really need them because I use other things already that I'm comfortable with. But it's just nice that they came with it. I don't know what they retail for, but I imagine even if it was $50 a piece, that means you're only paying like a few $100 or so for the unit itself for the 2+. I definitely recommend it. I think it's a great deal. It comes in a nice small package. Pretty much get what you need. I can't speak for PC users. I know a lot of PC users have a lot of drive issues and stuff like that with whatever type of unit you're using. Something like this for a Mac, I didn't have to do anything. Just plug it in. It comes with a USB-C to USB-C cord for newer MacBooks or Apple devices. And I have an iMac here, a 27-inch 5K, but it still has Thunderbolt in the regular blocky, I think it's USB 2.0 plug or the regular plug. So it comes with both of those cords, which is nice. So you don't need to go and buy anything when you get it. It's pretty much a plug and play system. Just go to your preferences for sound and set your input and output on the SSL 2+. And I hope I'm not forgetting anything. I would definitely recommend it, especially for the money. Even if this was a more expensive unit, I would definitely still recommend it. It was between this or before that, I was going to get another Symphony. The Symphony kind of looks like this as a desktop unit. And then they have... What else was it? It was a Universal Audio I was interested in because I wanted to see how the plugins and the DSP and stuff compared to the Slate stuff because I was going to get the Slate, the VS8, I think it's called, the rack, but I never ended up going for that, never ended up getting it. I didn't see enough reviews on that to see if it was worth it or something that I wanted to dive into. I know with a lot of audio equipment, when you buy certain things, you open it, you got to register it. And once you register it, you can't return it, can't exchange it. You're pretty much stuck. So that's something I didn't want to get jammed with. I don't know if you can see in the background. Let me move the microphone. You really can't see it. It's kind of out of focus, but let me just say this. I have the unit on, it's a speaker stand. I forgot what it's called, but this right here, it's made by Audio Engine. I think you can get it from like B&H or something like that. I use my old M Audios on here. They're like 5-inch speakers or something like that. Yeah, so I think those are HS7s in the back. Anyway, I tend to put the units on here. So my Apogee control here, I would actually put it on here and then put it on my desk. So it will kind of give me the control at an angle. So when I'm sitting at a desk, it's facing me versus it doesn't make sense to have these type of units flat on a desk like this and you're looking above it. It's just, you can't see it. So it's best to have it tilted up. I put the unit on the tilt. Well, it's already tilted, but it's even more tilted on this. So for example, here's the Apogee element. If you were to put it on a desk, I mean, this doesn't matter to be tilted because there's no display on top. But if there was, it would kind of just elevate it a little bit, like 15 degrees, 10 degrees or so like that. So that way you can kind of see what's going on a little bit better. So hopefully that makes sense. Now there's 2 headphone outs. It's still impressive for being a bus powered unit. I had an Apogee Duet for the iOS or whatever, iPad and Apple or whatever it was called. I love that unit. That unit sounded really good to me and nice and round and smooth as well. And I never had an issue, even though I was bus powered. I never had, and it came with a plug for different reasons. I can't remember what it was for, but I never had an issue with headphone gain or mic pre-gain. I didn't even use the mic pre-gain on here because I'm not interested in it. There's no button. From what I can tell is you don't hit any button. You don't hit line. You don't hit the high Z or anything. You pretty much just leave the gain on 0. Or this is what I did. I don't know if you're supposed to do it like this. I put it on 0, and on my VMS1, I just turn the gain as I would normally boost the gain, and it goes right in. And that's pretty much it. So there's really nothing else to say. If you can get your hands on one of these, I definitely would get one. And it says right here, it's engineered in UK and assembled in China. Obviously, that's where you're going to find some cuts or cost cuts. But you also have to think about this with any type of electronic gear at this point. There is there are ways to save money by getting it assembled in China, but keep this in mind. Technology, we're in 2020. It's not as hard for the industry to come up with some of the things that they came up with years ago, some of the analog gear. Now, some of it would never be emulated. Some of the sound quality of the vintage stuff is due to the older materials being used and parts and whatever else, but that's also why a lot of vintage gear, including microphones, never sounded the same between two items. So you could get 2 vintage microphones and they would not sound exactly the same. So there's inconsistencies, but people love the character of it and etc. So